Okay. Now, I will be sharing my screen for the lovely presentation that we have prepared. Wonderful. Can everybody see the screen? Excellent. Great. Welcome to our event, COP28 Unwrapped, Reflections from Youth Leaders, which ClimaTalk and ChangemakerXChange are hosting together. Now, just to give you a brief overview of the event, we'll have an introduction to ClimaTalk and ChangemakerXChange. Then we'll have some very short speaker introductions, and then we'll already go into listening to the amazing speakers in a moderated discussion, which include different points, and we'll try and go through them as quickly as possible so that there's also enough space for the Q&A at the end. And we encourage you to message your questions in the chat throughout the event, and the speakers will get back to them after their section in writing. And if it's something that we want to discuss in spoken version, we will save them for the Q&A, and you can also ask questions at the end, but do message them throughout the event in the chat. Great, then also already dive in. I'm Emma, I'm the founder and CEO of ClimaTalk. ClimaTalk is a youth-led nonprofit, and we demystify climate policy and empower young people in the fight for climate action. So we have a team of 120 even more young volunteers from over 30 countries, already 6 continents, which is amazing. And we have a running publication where we've already published over 400 short and accessible articles around all types of climate policy issues. And then we have 6 projects running in the field of climate policy and law and climate education careers. And here you can see just a map of where all of our wonderful volunteers are based in the world. And just a brief overview of our projects. And the one that we'll be talking about today the most is obviously the COP28 project, which started with the COP26 project and is now moving on to COP28 and COP29 project next year. And our COP project work includes reporting live from the climate conferences. So we've reported live from COP26, COP27, SP58, which is the intersessional conference that always happens in June, in between COPs in Bonn in Germany. And we've produced over 300 pieces of COP content, ranging from articles to events to fact sheets, booklets, interviews. You can see some of the examples at the bottom here. We created an ABCs of Climate COPs booklet this year, as well as an interactive timeline and weekly recaps during the weeks of COP28. And obviously, I would love to encourage you, if you're interested in our content, to follow us on our most active platforms, which is Instagram and LinkedIn. And there you can also see all of the different content that we have produced for COP28 this year. And I will already pass on to Nick.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emma. If you could spotlight me as well, I've lost the option, please. That would be super helpful. Welcome, everybody, from ChangemakerXChange as well. Brilliant to have you with us. I'm going to give you a 2-minute overview of what ChangemakerXChange is all about. So essentially, our raison d'etre is to help some of the world's leading young activists, impact entrepreneurs, innovators to thrive, both personally and in their organizations. And a key part of this has been our initiative Changemakers for the Planet, focused on lifting up the work of climate change makers. And we've seen in our work over the last 11 years supporting young people that climate is becoming more and more of a focus. A third of our community say they are working on SDGs connected to climate, and there's also been an increase of 20% over the last 2 years in that. But also, I think key is that this can be a real challenge. We celebrate many of your work, I think, and do a good job of that. But we also want to recognize that it can be a tough journey, that there is often lacking personal financial security, juggling responsibilities, burnout, risk, and much more. So what we do is create a community. We connect, support, and amplify the impact of young people. And so great to have so many of you on the call today from ChangeMakerXChange as well. Our initiative addresses all dimensions of the planetary crisis. So we have people working on everything from plastic pollution to mobilizing young people to circular economy, all elements of the planetary crisis. And at COP28, next slide, please. We had over 50 members present, and you can see just some of them in this picture, doing everything from negotiating on climate tech, finance, loss and damage, to advising on youth participation, bringing messages back home to youth audiences, training new youth negotiators, platforming critical voices and issues like gender, indigenous rights, oceans. And our support was for some programs, financial support, and otherwise convening, guiding, and helping the cohort navigate the absolutely insane, overwhelming space that was COP28. And find out more about our work at those websites, ChangeMakerXChange.org. And we'll have many more programs coming next year, which you can join the waiting lists for if you haven't already. And back to you, Emma. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for this amazing introduction. I'm just going to change the spotlights again because now we will introduce our wonderful speakers. So we have 4 incredible speakers with us today. We have Hrushitaa and Annabelle, who were at COP28 as part of our ClimaTalk delegation and are doing lots of amazing things in the climate and environmental space outside of ClimaTalk as well. And then we have Balakis and her team from ChangeMakerXChange, who are also doing brilliant work as climate activists and climate policy analysts, founders and coordinators in the various platforms and organizations that we couldn't possibly list everything. But do check them out and check out everything that they've done because it's all amazing and incredible and very inspiring. Great, then I will already stop screen sharing because we will go into our discussion, which we are very excited for. Perfect. Then I will start by passing to you, Annabelle, to give us a very brief overview of COP, specifically for all of the newbies that we have on the call, so that they get a good overview of what is COP and what was COP28.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma. So COP28 this year was held in Dubai, which was a relatively controversial location, kind of given its proximity and engagement with the fossil fuel industry. And so to kind of set the stage to where the world left off prior to COP28 and after COP27 ended, there was a decision made to establish the Loss and Damage Fund. A mitigation work program was launched. There were renewed discussions emphasizing the need to kind of reform financial systems and globally shift towards a more low carbon economy. And so this context really informed the tasks that were set out at COP28. And the world saw a really ambitious renewable energy agenda specifically that most notably included the call to triple the capacity of renewables and double energy efficiency by 2030. However, it was still kind of unclear how the presidency was going to engage in discussions about fossil fuels phase out because there was a lot of strong criticism earlier this year as the president of COP28 is also the group CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. And so to kind of move into the actual proceedings of COP, day one was a really historic day as a decision was already made confirming the transitional committee text for the Loss and Damage Fund. And on this day, the pledges from various countries totaled to a little over $0.7 billion, alongside the World Bank being appointed as the interim host of the fund for the first 4 years. And then the stocktake also happened. It's a process that happens every 5 years, which kind of checks the progress of countries in regards to the Paris Agreement's goals. It informs the next round of nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, and the first stocktake happened this year at COP28. So that was also a very, very significant event. And besides showing that current events are basically not at all enough to keep within this 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, and that the remaining carbon budget is being really rapidly depleted, the Global Stocktake text that was adopted also contained very convoluted language surrounding fossil fuel reduction that could be understood differently by a lot of different types of stakeholders. And so it's been criticized for basically giving a lot of oil companies a pass to continue doing business as usual. And so this is definitely a very defining and long-lasting impression of COP28 on many communities around the world. And this kind of attention seemed to be intentionally diverted from the need to phase out fossil fuels and redirected towards, certain false solutions like carbon capture that give the fossil fuel industry a loophole. But in general, many of the events and panels and workshops, or even the nature of the negotiations this year was centered around climate finance, whether it be kind of gaining a financial return on investing in clean tech, whether it be, financing climate solutions, grants, aids, etc., but highlighting the voices of marginalized communities, of youth, of equity-driven climate organizers is kind of a resounding message from these groups at COP28, is that there is not enough funding in the climate space, first of all, but more specifically that there is not enough capital being directed towards the actual front lines of climate action. And so what people were calling out was that even if governments, do receive climate funding from certain funds, it rarely goes towards the communities that are truly impacted by climate change, or the indigenous and local communities that have both the needs and the solutions. And so to end off this, quick overview, I think it's worth noting that this was the largest COP site ever. This was held at the World Expo 2020. The venue boasted, 225 pavilions. There was a record high of over 100,000 participants over both the blue and green zone, and this is double the previous record. But only around 15,000 of these individuals were from observer organizations. In contrast, there were around 2,500 fossil fuel lobbyists in attendance. And this is even, a stark comparison to COP27's 336 fossil fuel lobbyists. And many of these lobbyists, unfortunately, hold party badges, which means that they are able to participate in and slow down the negotiations, which is definitely unfortunate, and something that myself and many other delegates attending from the ground definitely saw this in action, where negotiations and meetings had to be pushed back, delayed, and extremely shortened. And so overall, I think it can be largely agreed upon that COP28 didn't really prescribe the course correction that the world urgently needs. And we need to definitely continue celebrating wins and generating hope, because hope is what's going to get us through this. So for example, yes, there was language around transitioning away from fossil fuels embedded, but despite the many achievements we have seen, there's still such a long road ahead. So yeah, thanks. I'll pass it back to Emma.
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for this brilliant overview. It was not easy to get all of this information in under 5 minutes, so well done. This was a great start. Speaking of the stocktake and the negotiations, I would already pass on to her team to give us a bit of a more detailed insight into the global stocktake and negotiations more generally.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning to some of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak at this webinar post COP28, and I thanks also Nick, our leader from CXC, for the opportunity, because I was more interested in the post COP28 and how we can reflect our engagement into the COP. That only can give us an opportunity to maintain the momentum post-COP. So today I would like to reflect on the outcomes of COP28 negotiations, particularly focusing on the global stocktake and its implications for our collective journey toward a sustainable future. The COP28 summit marked a pivotal moment in our global climate efforts, primarily through the first ever global stocktake under the Paris Agreement. This process was not just a routine check, but a critical evaluation of where we stand in our fight against climate change. It was a moment of truth, revealing the gaps between commitments and actions. And I think one of the most significant outcomes of the COP28 was the explicit call for all countries to contribute to transitioning away from fossil fuel. This is a landmark decision, marking the first time in nearly 30 years that a COP decision has directly addressed all fossil fuels. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that the outcomes feel short the full phase out. Many experts believe it is necessary to stay below the critical 1.5 Celsius degree. But I think the language used in the Stocktake text predominantly non-operative verbs like recalls or notes and welcomes reflects a cautious approach lacking the urgency and decisiveness that the situation demands. Also, the Stocktake emphasized the need to triple renewable energy capacity and double the rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. These are ambitious goals, but they are essential steps if we are to meet the Paris Agreement objectives. So I can say that the Global Stocktake is a 5-yearly process, cornerstone of the Paris ratchet mechanism designed to incrementally increase climate action over time. The COP28 was therefore a critical juncture, not just a routine meeting. So it set the direction for future climate action as emphasized by key figures, I can say like Liao, Henneman, and John Kerry. So in the lead up to COP28, the technical stage of Stocktake had already shown that countries were failing far short of their collective climate goals. And the challenge at COP28 was to transform this stark findings into concrete or concerted actions. So the summit co-chairs worked diligently to synthesize, you cannot imagine, hundreds of pages of submissions into a coherent document reflecting the diverse perspectives and priorities of participating parties or countries. So despite the challenges, I can say the final Stocktake deal, including the text of on transitioning away from fossil fuel, was a significant step forward. It situates the call for global efforts within the context of the need for deep and rapid and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. However, it's important to note that the wording does not include any near-term targets pointing only to net zero emission by 2050. So the final text also calls for tripling of renewable energy capacity and doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. These targets are crucial for meeting our climate goals, but they were set without specific numerical targets in the final draft. Moreover, the Stocktake was not solely focused on emission cuts. It covered a comprehensive range of issues under the Paris Agreement, including adaptation, finance, capacity building, technology, loss and damage, and the impact of climate action on fossil fuel dependent economies. As we look ahead, the guidance for developing the next round of national climate pledges under the Paris regime is clear. Countries are encouraged to submit ambitious economy-wide emission reduction targets. That is covering all the greenhouse gases and sectors aligned with limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius degree. This is a crucial step in ensuring that our action match our commitment. And they can say, in conclusion, while COP28 made significant strides, it's also highlighted the immense challenges that lie ahead. So the Global Stocktake has set the stage, but it is now, I can say, the time or up to us as a global community to turn these commitments into action. And the journey toward a sustainable future is a collective one. So it requires our efforts and they require the efforts of all nations, including us as young people who can make the change by an innovative solutions. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hatim, for this brilliant overview and insights, especially coming from you, as I know you were very engaged and involved throughout the COP weeks. So thank you so much. We're now going to hop into a very quick round for all of our lovely speakers to ask them to share their COP28 youth highlight, since we are all about empowering young people and our generation. So I'm going to pass to Hrushitaa. Do you want to share your youth highlight at COP?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you all so much for having me here. It's very easy for me to say that, I'm clearly very overwhelmed because this was my first ever COP experience. And talking about the question you asked, Emma, my youth highlight was inclusion. That's just one word that I can include here. I saw a lot of youth delegates out there trying to participate in the Global Stocktake in discussions. That wasn't possible, of course, because of a lot of restrictions. And we expect that. But so I would say I sum it up in two words: inclusion and slight disappointment.
Thank you, Hrushitaa, for this answer. I'll pass to Balakis. Do you want to give the next reply?
Yes, thank you so much, Emma. I think my COP highlight would be that for the first time we had an health thematic day, because now we're now looking at how health is really playing a major role in climate change, and not just health. Now we're also looking at mental health for young people in these spaces. So I think that stood out for me. And another shocking thing that, I was expecting that the UAE would deliver was the loss and damage fund, right? At the opening, it just felt like, oh, this would have been done years ago. So why were we just, why do we have to protest, before they get it done? So that was like a good move on that angle. But I'm just worried now. My worry is that all of these funds that has been mentioned, declared, how do we get it down to the people that really, really need it to create impact? So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, super important topic, especially for our generation. Annabelle, do you want to give your youth highlight?
I'd love to. Yeah, I think to keep it short and sweet, the global connections that I fostered was really the main highlight. The power and solidarity that I felt when I would meet someone from a completely different part of the world who was doing the same kind of work as me, with the same missions, the same values, and spending a week really uplifting each other and spending time with a bunch of youth from a bunch of different places will be one of my core memories, not only in my COP experience, but also just my climate career. And it's really amazing to be able to meet all these amazing leaders and change makers who continue to show up for their communities day after day in so many different ways.
Amazing. That's wonderful to hear, Annabelle. And Hatim, what was your youth highlight at COP?
So I think to make it short, two factors or 2 points are important or highlight come as a takeaway with me from COP28. The first point is I can see only in my circle how CXC support young people to be in COP28, and through the engagement with some partners in the private sector, this gives me a new perspective how COP28 can include different perspectives, including private sector, young people, and also and young people, how can they have the ability to have fresh perspectives and can also not have a kind of confrontation with diplomatic language that is in the negotiations. So this year I see a high demand from young people, including me, to engage with negotiations, which is negotiations is only a process, and young people have that ability to ask about negotiations and the resolutions and documents that are a factor. Another point is the youth and children pavilion. We have a youth children, we have a high level climate champion, a young person. We have a document. So we have many highlights coming from COP28 that was formal today, and how we can capitalize on what we have today as a highlight to open the doors or to unlock the opportunities for the COP29. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, also great that you mentioned the Children and Youth Pavilion, which was the second year that this was this happened at COP. And for all of the newbies in the room, pavilions are like little booths for different countries and different topics. And you have amazing ones like for the children and youth and for different countries. You also have some other interests represented. I believe there was an OPEC one this year as well. So there are different areas that you can imagine in the conference space to give you an idea. Perfect. Then we already have time for the next section, and I'm going to pass to you, Balakis, to comment on gender equality at COP, since I know you were very involved in that topic, to give us an insight.
All right, thank you so much, Emma. And just to like say that my COP highlights that I didn't mention was the pavilions. The Expo City was another thing entirely. It was not easy to navigate the pavilions, unlike Sharm el-Sheikh, like you just enter pavilions. But this one, you had to literally open doors before you enter. Like. Yeah, but I mean, the map, they provided a good app that could, help you navigate through. So for COP28, there was a lot of gender push in all conversation. I mean, let me say most conversation, because now countries are waking up to the fact that there is a gender gap when it comes to climate action that they're already taking. And we need to be able to bridge that gap. And a lot of young people also are using that avenue to learn how they can navigate through in that space to put in gender action into whatever work they're doing in their local communities. So I'm just going to make reference to one or two. So for pre-COP, the IUCN, in partnership with the United Nations and other partners, they had a gender and data event, which brought together a lot of government representatives, civil society, young people, and others to reflect on the importance of data in the importance of gender data in taking climate action. And it was really a room full of experts where people are reflecting on how data is really important in helping us to make the decisions that we're making on gender gap. And then we have the UN FCCC also pushing a lot, in terms of hosting technical dialogue, because most of the time we come to events like this, we meet people, but we don't know what these technical terms are. We don't know what we're really talking about. So there was a technical dialogue on financing gender response for the just transition and climate action. And I also think that we cannot, talk about gender climate action without finance, right? We already have data, we have this existing problem, but we need finance to be able to cope them. And yeah, these are like many activities. And I think overall, in conclusion, right, we had the gender responsive just transition. I'm sorry for the background. We had, the gender responsive just transition and climate action partnership, which was signed by a lot of ministers and a lot of governments and countries to push more on gender and climate action. So these are like effort, but I also think that beyond the gatherings that we have at the eye level, because most of the time we prepare for the eye level, but we go back to our communities without really doing the main work, right? So I'm just hoping that the effort that has been put into place in terms of driving gender, because we also had we had the gender official gender day at COP, which was, I think, December 7th. I can't remember precisely, but there was a gender day. And that was like a good one. That was a good effort for everybody to focus their effort, their work and thoughts and finances around gender. Because when we talk about gender, also, let me change this narrative. It's not about men alone or women alone. We're talking about both gender. So people don't feel marginalized in between. So those are like some thought, but I think we can also do better. And I'm really excited that this would lay a good foundation for what would happen at COP29 and COP30. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. That was a brilliant overview. Thank you so much. And now we can hop on to our next question, which is going to be another quick round about what has something that surprised you at COP. And this can be something related to content, but this can also be more of a fun fact from behind the scenes that you may not have, you may have imagined differently, or people from who didn't attend in person might not know. So I'm going to pass to Annabelle. Do you want to start?
Sure, thank you, Emma. So I think a kind of wholesome surprise, or not something that I completely didn't know, but just something that was reaffirmed at COP was that, you see these big names, you see these flashy or prestigious titles associated with a lot of badge holders, but at the end of the day, everyone is just a regular human being. A lot of these delegates stay at the same hotels together. You see them when you're eating breakfast, you transit together with a venue to them, you see them in between negotiations, calling their family. Everyone's really ecstatic to take selfies in front of the COP28 green backdrop. And so I think that, being in such a diverse environment, COP28 was definitely the most diverse environment I've ever been in. And yet it really reaffirmed that we really have more in common with each other than we have differences. And so moving forward, as youth change makers and aspirational climate leaders, knowing this, we can think about, how do we leverage this? How do we use this to our advantage in advocacy and lobbying that we do? And so I think that was something that was really meaningful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Annabelle. Hrushitaa, do you want to share next?
Sure, but how do I, continue after that? That was such a wonderful overview. Thank you so much for that, Annabelle. One thing that surprised me particularly was the amount of delegations from corporations that are at the forefront. That are the cause for, everything that's happening. The top 100 companies, there were a lot of delegations from there who were playing an active part in the discussions in the agenda, if I may say so. And that was disheartening. But even on the other hand, I got to connect, as Annabelle said, everyone was just a human there. You could connect with them on a personal level and get to know them. And unless you ask, you never know who the person in front of you really is. So I was just talking to people, and then they turned out to be government delegations, like appointed by the governments, and I just could not believe that. So of course, the surprise element was always there.
That's super nice. Thank you so much. Hatim, do you want to go next?
Thank you so much, Emma. Maybe I prefer to call it both the fun and the surprise thing that before joining the COP28, I was working on my thesis in a graduate program about how multilateral diplomacy can facilitate the efforts to address loss and damage within UNFCCC. And was interested to see how the negotiations will work and go to by the end of the COP. I see how that system can interact with the loss and damage fund. But they make me disappointed. I agreed on the loss and damage in the first day. So that was something funny, how my thesis is going about that. And I'm thinking how the multilateral system is work. And when I arrived to the COP, they didn't give me a space where I can just illustrate how the countries are interacting. And they agreed on the loss and damage fund, which is something very good for the nations in developing situations. And also, I think also the other one, how many young people was involved in the negotiations and asking about the outcomes. This is something important. I think surprised me, this shift, because before young people asking only about to get accreditation. Today, this is not the objective. Today, young people asking for the money, asking for, when I say the money, the program of development for their countries, which is something important.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing this. And Balikis, do you want to share?
Yes, because this call is so little, so Emma, we should have made it longer because it's a lot of surprises from the management, right? I think it's important that we also give accolades to the team that really put COP28 together. The management was so top-notch, right? No caps, so top-notch, from the metro to the app, to they have helps you to navigate all of the venues, all of the pavilions. It was just so easy, and everything was just working really seamlessly. You could keep your bags somewhere, in a clock room for a while, and you go pick it up. It's safe. If you lost anything, you can go to Lost and Found. You ask questions. There was just like a lot of that services, but I also think that in that aspect they could have done better with their volunteers, because sometimes you're just asking some of these volunteer questions and they don't even understand what is going on. They don't even know what it is. But overall, I think they did very well. And I also think one of the shocking things for me was, I I made a friend that it felt like we've been friends since childhood at COP. Steve introduced me to Shamim, and we've been so close ever since. Like literally since the day that we were introduced, we go to COP every day together. We do everything together. So it's just like that special moment. And lastly, right, the accommodation discount was so helpful, right? I mean, the hotel I stayed, naturally, I think it was around $200, right, per night. And I was paying $30 per night, right? That was the discount that was provided. So I felt like all of these efforts are very encouraging. And I think that as COP grows, we would continue to have more effort that, would accommodate more people to participate in the COP process. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing. And now our final part of the moderated discussion, I'll pass to Hrushitaa, who will give maybe some ideas and an inspiration to those of you who are on this call who might want to get involved in COP29 or even the Bonn conference or just generally in UNFCCC processes. And for this, I will just reshare my screen because she has prepared some wonderful slides to help with the presentation. Can you all see the screen? Wonderful.
Yes, I can see it now.
Then I'll pass to you, Hrushitaa.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for staying on the call. I'll just dive a little bit into getting involved with the proceedings at COP29 and beyond, and how we don't have to wait till next November. We can just start gearing up for it right now, or take your time for the holidays if you celebrate, and start off with the new year. But we don't have to wait till, let's say, September or October to understand exactly how should I get into the COP processes. If you're new to the process, trust me, I was new to the process 2 months ago, so I can certainly vouch that it can be very overwhelming. So if we just move to the next slide, I'll take us through a few points that I thought would, make the process a little less daunting. Of course, the first thing is to do your due diligence. Find your footing with the respective thematic areas that take place. A little example that I can provide is my second day at COP, which was the 4th of December, was Gender Equality Day. And on that day, all the discussions, most of them at least, were centered around inclusive gender or gender inclusion in decision-making processes, how certain aspects of UN decisions or COP decisions should include voices from gender groups that are not as well represented. Then, of course, find your footing, understand exactly which aspect of COP. You don't have to select just one. You can select multiple of them. Which aspect or aspects of COP that you would want to resonate with and actually track or just get better acquainted with. That's how that's like 70% of the preparation. Then comes the 10%, which is make yourself visible and known. Make sure people or organizations who are actively involved in COP, such as, of course, ClimaTalk and CXC, know that you want to, be there. You are interested, and you require some assistance with maybe resources to understand exactly how to get involved or finances. All of that. There's a lot of organizations, especially youth-led organizations, that want people to join them and represent them. So put your best foot forward. Don't worry about, would I have to send my resume to them? Would I have to go through interviews? Trust me. And when it comes to youth-led organizations, I can vouch for the fact that it's a very safe space to be in, and it just gives us a better sense of community. And of course, for COPs, especially for the blue zone, we require badges. So get in touch with these organizations a little better in advance, maybe in the first half of the year, around June, to just understand exactly where you can go and how you can get involved. Now, this part, the next point is one of my favorite ones. Talk more and talk louder. Be absolutely bold to yourself. Please do not apologize or be apologetic for yourself in any manner. It is so important to just be out there in negotiations or listen to them and be a part of the audience that listens actively. Be present. You may not have to scream out loud or, make your voice heard, but it definitely has to be known that you are there. So talk more, talk louder, comment on these events after they take place, put out posts on LinkedIn or Instagram, any social media that you're comfortable with. Then and expand your scope of interactions. Talk about climate action outside of COP as well, the Bonn conferences. Even if you don't want to cover conferences, you want to talk about something a small startup in your local community is doing, amplify their voices, be involved in the entire discussion, not just, the politicized versions of it. Then engage and work with local governments and IGOs, which is intergovernmental organizations. Local governments, of course, at COP, the main agenda is to have representatives from different nations come in. So I'm very sure if your nation is a member state, they would have a certain delegation that they would want to put out at COP. So try and get in touch with your local authorities. I know it can be daunting for as especially as youths, members of the youth, to go out there and represent our governments. But give it a shot. It's not make or break. Just try putting a foot in the door. If it works, why not go ahead with it? And for IGOs, there's Youngo, there's several UN subsidiaries that involve youth delegates especially. So try and approach them. And this is by far the most important point of mine. Please know your value. Do not diminish yourself when you approach these organizations or these members, because they see what you tell them. So put your best foot forward, show them that you are absolutely the best person to be at COP29 or any other conference that you want to go to. Show them that you are phenomenal and make them believe that you deserve to be there. And have them pay you for it. Honestly, it works well. So yeah, those were a few points. I know that young people tend to undervalue ourselves because of the way society sees us. I personally, I'm turning 21 in just a few days, and I've been told several times, "You're just 20, you're just 19. Why are you, working so much for this?" That is because that is the need of the hour. So never let your others diminish your light. Be yourself and put your best foot forward. Thank you.
Amazing. This was a beautiful ending, Hrushitaa. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and summary. Now we have a couple of minutes. Well, thank you all to our amazing speakers for your brilliant contribution. I can see Balakis is rejoining. That was fantastic, and you did a wonderful job summarizing this in the very limited time that we have. So well done, and thank you so much. If anybody has any questions that were not replied to already in the chat, please feel free to post them in the chat now, and we will pass them on to the relevant speaker. And try to explain that, or anything that you were missing, anything that you still want to learn more about, any information that you were looking for that you haven't found or that you would like help with finding. And in the meantime, as the questions come in, I think I will already pass to you, Nick, if you want to share some final words from CXC and maybe a call to action from ChangemakerXChange.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks to everyone for the super laser sharp insights. I really enjoyed listening to them. Yeah, so an invitation to everyone really on the call. Register for our waitlist if you think our programs might be a fit for you. I'm dropping the link in the chat. We have lots of programs around climate crisis next year, and also check out our open source resources. We have everything from climate action resources, diversity, equity, inclusion resources, facilitation, system change, all the kind of key tools for your box as young change makers, all available in the link I just shared in the chat. Thanks again.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And from ClimaTalk side, obviously, we try to provide as much help as we can, in particular, referring to Hrushitā's first point, to learn about climate policy, learn about the different topics, understand them, because knowledge is power. And once you know and once you understand policy, and climate policy can be incredibly overwhelming when you first start engaging with it, but it's actually not that difficult once you break it down. And this is what we're trying to do at ClimaTalk, is we're trying to break down the different topics and explain it in terms that are easy to understand for everybody, because it's very easy to get lost in jargon and acronyms. So I am just pasting the link in the chat to our COP section, where you can find hundreds and hundreds of articles and booklets, and everything was prepared by our young climate policy experts to help you navigate through the spaces of COP. If you're looking to get engaged in the more like at a university level, for example, we have a university courses map with over 400 courses. We're going to be doing a big relaunch in January for a lot more courses, also in different continents that we currently have represented. So you can find courses, undergraduate, postgraduate, in climate policy and all topics related to climate policy, as well as already some individual student reviews, so you can see which course might be a good fit. And then I also just want to encourage you to follow ClimaTalk for any volunteering opportunities if you're interested. We're also accepting spontaneous applications, and just note that you do not have to be an expert in climate policy to volunteer with us, because the content you see that we post is obviously created by people who already know quite a lot about the topics, but our team is composed of so many different people. We have people behind each design, behind every post. We have people behind the website. We have people behind editing, editing for language, making it more understandable, double checking everything. So we have so many different teams and opportunities, and we need lots of different skills. And this is the same in the entire climate policy space. You can choose to, if you have the privilege and the opportunity to choose where you can invest your skills. You don't have to be an expert in climate policy to be able to work for climate, is my main point, and what I want to encourage everybody to think about as well. And some resources, we've posted some in the chat already. Obviously, we have loads of resources at ClimaTalk. The lovely changemakers have so many resources as an organization, but also the individual changemakers in the programs are posting fantastic content. So do follow them to learn more about all things environment and COP. And if you want more detail, there are great organizations like Carbon Brief, if you're already very deep in the topic and want to read through some very in-depth analyses that are brilliantly made, do check them out as well. Fantastic. Are there any final questions, any final remarks from any of the speakers that you want to share?
All right, Emma, I'll just go. So let me say thank you so much for organizing in collaboration with Sexy. I think this is something that we really need. So it helps us that we have access to the space to step down knowledge to people who do not have access to the space, and see rooms for collaboration. So what I'm just going to advise anyone in the room, especially if you're anticipating to be part of COP29 and COP processes generally, you have to walk the path. Many of us on this call, we did not get there overnight. We walked the path, and you need to understand you have to have a purpose. You cannot just say you want to be part of COP processes. You have to have a purpose. You have to have your own personal agenda that you're trying to push. And I'll just cap it up with, do not overwhelm yourself. This was one thing I pushed strongly out at COP28, that our well-being is so important as climate activists. We dress so much thinking about climate change, but we're not thinking about ourselves. We're not growing as person in family, even in our professional career. We're abandoning because of climate change. It's not so cool. So let's try as much as possible to have strong courtesy for our well-being. And I mean, I look forward to connecting. I'm happy to provide more information if you might need them about my participation at COP. And yeah, I look forward to seeing many of you at COP29, hopefully. Yes, so thanks so much, Emma. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was such an important point to take care of ourselves, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we also can't take care of the planet. So I think this is a very important point at the end. I've just seen a message went to me directly regarding a contact. So I'm just going to put an email address in case you have any further questions. I'm very happy to receive any emails, and emails from that address are forwarded to me directly. So feel free to get in touch if you have any questions, any follow-up questions, or looking for any advice. Want some further input, feel free to reach out, and very happy to communicate further. Great. Then I will just say another big thank you to first all of our fantastic speakers, Annabelle, her team, Hrushitaa, Balikis. That was amazing. So glad that we had you. Big thanks to Nick for co-organizing this event, and obviously thank you for everybody who attended so shortly before the holidays for many of you. So very much appreciate the enthusiasm and the motivation, and yeah, let's go for 2024.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks.